Welcome to Mr. Chalk's Revision Tips. In this video, we will look at glucose regulation, insulin and glucagon. So just before we move on and start looking at the control of glucose, let's just have a brief recall about osmosis. So remember that osmosis is the movement of water from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. So the water moves from a high concentration of solute with the effect of equalizing the solute concentration across a permeable membrane. So from the point of view of the water, it undergoes diffusion, right? So moving from a high concentration to a low concentration. So if we look at blood glucose, so glucose is needed for cells for respiration, right? It's important that blood glucose is maintained so that respiration in the body can also be maintained. So if the blood glucose concentration is too high, the pancreas produces the hormone insulin that causes the glucose to move from the blood into the cells or into the cells in the liver, where it can be used at a later date. So insulin reduces the level of glucose in the blood plasma by using up excess glucose, increasing the amount of glucose absorbed by cells in the body, especially the liver, and turning the glucose into glycogen so it is stored. Glucagon, however, increases the level of glucose in blood plasma, so it causes less glucose to be uptaken by cells in the liver. It also causes the stored glycogen to be broken back down into glucose, which then passes back out into the blood. And glycogenesis, right, is just the name of the metabolic pathway that results in the generation of glucose from non-glucose products. So if we think about a high concentration of glucose in the blood can harm body cells as a result of osmosis, right? That's because water will move out of cells from a diluted to a concentrated solution, and that would cause the cells to shrink or get small, which would eventually end up in cell death. So the main hormones that affect blood glucose include insulin and glucagon. Insulin is the hormone made by the pancreas that allows your body to use the glucose from carbohydrates that you eat, and it causes it to be stored. And glucagon works alongside this hormone to help control glucose levels. So glucagon is released to stop blood glucose levels dropping too low. So if we look at the physical process of decreasing blood glucose, so to start off with, using the excess glucose that's stored in the or is being transported in the blood will reduce the blood glucose. So increasing the amount of glucose absorbed by the body cells, turning the glucose into glycogen, are all ways that blood glucose can be lowered easily. So insulin reduces the concentration of glucose. Describe how insulin does this. Right, quite simply, insulin causes glucose to move into the liver cells or into muscle cells, where it's either used for respiration or it's stored. So many diabetics need to take insulin. Explain why. Right, this is because diabetics often can't make their own insulin. So blood sugar rises because insufficient insulin is secreted by the body, which would cause major health problems if they didn't take the insulin. So explain why there is too little sugar in the blood if too much insulin is taken. That's because it would increase the rate of conversion of glucose into glycogen in the liver. And which organ monitors glucose? It is the pancreas. So if we're looking at increasing blood glucose, so glucagon increases the level of blood glucose in the blood. So it slows the use of glucose, it reduces the amount of glucose that's absorbed into cells, particularly in the liver. It causes stored glycogen to be broken back down into glucose, which is then released back into the blood. And in addition to this, glucose promotes the conversion of fatty acids into glucose. Remember, that's a process called gluconeogenesis. So explain how the body restores blood glucose levels if it drops too low. Right, quite simply, it increases the secretion of glucagon by the pancreas, which results in the conversion of glycogen into glucose. And this diagram just goes and summarises some of those key points.
Thanks for watching.